Hola amigos, ¿cómo estás? Me llamo Ryan, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my ADHD friendly methods for learning Spanish and how I incorporate them into my busy life. Vámonos, chicos! Well, what do you know? Here I am editing the video, and I forgot to change to display capture when I was talking about stuff on screen. If you know, you know. Suffice to say, I really screwed the pooch on this one. That's a weird idiom. Learning languages got me thinking about things like idioms. I'll be making a video about how I make my videos at some point, and I'll probably talk about some of the issues I've had, like this one. But yeah, I mean, one of my goals in my last video was to improve my videos, and I'd like to think the quality's already improved quite a bit in just the one video. So I'll keep working on it. Hopefully, my next one will be better, and don't judge me too harshly. All right. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about my history with Spanish and where I'm at with that. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about my overall mentality for how I'm going to go about learning Spanish and what my overall thought process on this is. Then I'm going to talk about my actual methods and resources and apps I use and why I use what I use and all that and how I use the resources. And then I'm going to go on to some free resources for anyone who can't spend a little bit of money. I don't spend a whole lot myself, but I have spent a little, and I do get an app paid for pro from work. But there are free alternatives that you can use, or very cheap alternatives. So let's get into it. Well, I took some Spanish in high school, freshman year and sophomore year. My freshman year, I did pretty well. I had a really good teacher. I got like a B, and I learned the very basics, and that stuff kind of stuck with me. My second year, I got like a D or some crap, barely passed the class. Really wasn't into the teacher. He didn't make it fun at all. And then I've worked with Spanish speaking people my entire life and kind of, helped the basics stick. Uh, I was able to communicate with them, well, any of the non English speaking ones, uh, with like pictures, hand gestures, the little bit of Spanish I knew, the little bit of English they knew. So we made it work. And then I've done a few levels of Duolingo. It got boring quick. I just could not stick with it. I know repetition is key for learning, but it was repetitious in a way that just didn't help my dopamine levels whatsoever. So there's pretty much my history with Spanish. Yo hablo muy poco español, but I'm I'm learning, and I'm probably further along than anyone who would consider themselves a beginner. All right, one last thing before I get into my methods and resources. I just want to say how important it is to know your reasons why. My reasons is I want to talk to people. I have family, I have friends, I have coworkers, and as I've started learning, I've found more reasons. I'm into the culture. I'm into the music. I want to learn more about the history of South America. Um, I'm into politics, so I'm interested in politically, like the relationship between America and Spanish speaking countries south of the border. So that's my why. Find your why. It's also important to talk about what it is I want to learn. So I want to learn how to speak with other people, like I said, which includes being able to understand them. So I have to listen. I have to learn how to listen and understand what's being said natively, not just someone who's speaking extra clear so I can understand them. Also, I want to be able to read. I want to be able to read the news. I want to be able to read books, entertainment, um, and of course, having Spanish subtitles on are important to help clarify what it is the speakers are saying. If subtitles when I'm watching Spanish shows and stuff, which I will get into. So now that all that's out of the way, On to what you actually came for, my methods and resources that I use while having ADHD. That was worded terribly, but you get me. So you just got to remember that it's a lifelong goal. You're not going to I don't plan on like learning the language or mastering the language. I want to learn how to speak with people. I want to get fluent enough to talk about the things I want to talk about. And that's all I care about. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll want to master it. I'm not giving myself any time limits. I just want to kind of track my progress. Like, record myself now, record myself in a month, record myself in 3 months, 6 months, see how I'm doing now versus how I was doing. And I'm sure I'll notice progress. The longer I can speak to somebody, the longer I can speak to my teachers or whatever without having to stop and speak English for a minute or whatever. And I'm not going to give myself any arbitrary time limits on anything. I'm just going to learn over time. I'm also going to reward myself with small things that will help me learn my Spanish. Like, for instance, I just bought this not too long ago. This is one of my resources. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but it's Spanish English dictionary. This cost me like $6 or something on Amazon, and it's great. It's got English to Spanish, Spanish to English. It's got some grammar. It's got some pronunciation. Some basics. Some conjugations of verbs even. Yeah, reward yourself with little things. I mean, it's real fun for me to look through this. If this doesn't do it for you, buy yourself uh, a book or a movie or a series in that language, in Spanish or whatever. So yeah, little rewards are great. So I mentioned podcasts and listening to native speakers while I'm working and driving. Let's start with that. As I mentioned, I'm into politics, so I listened to this podcaster named Diego Ruzzarin. He was on a political podcast that I listened to in English, and he mentioned he was from South America, so that's how I got into him. I mean, I'm sure you can just go on YouTube or search the internet for Spanish podcasts on whatever topic it is you're into, and find plenty of stuff. And you know, maybe if you're into certain stuff and they have guests from other parts of the world, maybe they've had a guest that speaks Spanish, and that'd be a good place to start. So that is just a native speaker doing native content for other native speakers. There are also podcasts that are directed at people learning Spanish. um, Spanish Butterfly is good. She is a Mexican who is speaking in English to teach you the Spanish, so that's great for beginners. There's another one called Hola Spanish, where she speaks in Spanish, teaching you Spanish. So that might be a little bit better for once you've got a little bit better hold of things, but all this stuff is also good just to like prepare your ear for how it's spoken. And because she's teaching Spanish, she does enunciate very well and speaks clearly, so it's easier to understand her. There's Dreaming Spanish, which basically is its own series that claims to be able to teach you Spanish from nothing all the way to fluent just by watching their videos, which is for like immersion, which is, listening to and watching movies and like putting yourself in the language, reading, writing, listening, speaking. Dreaming Spanish is really good for that. I mostly just use it to listen to the Spanish and kind of get a feel for it. So, I mean, you can give that a try if you want to try a free method. I guess I'll tack that on to the end in the free spot too. But yeah, I just use it basically to get used to the language. I use probably more advanced than I actually understand, but that's kind of what I'm doing for me. I'm just trying to do immersion basically and listen to subjects and watch subjects that interest me to keep my brain motivated. And then there's Easy Spanish, where they just basically have conversations with people in Spanish speaking countries about simple topics, and they try and speak slowly and enunciate their words so that learners can understand. Has interviews with people on the streets about weather or their city, or just generalized topics, and you can kind of get a feel for how that sounds, and you can also mimic this stuff. They also include subtitles in both English and Spanish on their videos. There's also Spanish practice, which is really good. It's basically just listening to conversations and stories with little animations that help you kind of visualize what they're saying. So I guess I squeezed videos in there too, but yeah, podcasts and videos, I watch them all on YouTube. So that's how I get some of my immersion and some of my like video learning uh, stuff. Of course, there's Netflix or whatever video entertainment app you use. Netflix, I actually switched over to Netflix. I had Paramount and they don't have anything in Spanish, but make a profile in Spanish. I made a Spanish profile, and then you start searching for stuff in Spanish, and eventually it'll only offer you stuff that has um, Spanish dubs and subs. And that way you can listen to the dub and read the subtitles at the same time. Now, they don't always match up entirely because, like, the dubs are translated by different people than the subtitles. The same is true actually with my book and my podcast audiobook. It it's not perfect. It lines up pretty dang close though, and when you catch those things, it kind of makes you feel smart. You're like, I actually caught that. It's not the right word there. A little bit of fun. So there's another resource I use. So those are some of my audio and video learning resources that I have. Another good audio resource for learning Spanish is audiobooks. And they go really well when you have the actual book as well. So I have The Hunger Games, Los Juegos del Hambre. So I can compare the two books. And I also found a podcast which is simply the audiobook. So I got the audiobook for free. I paid like $5 for the Spanish version of that book. I already had the English version, so I was lucky there, but I'm pretty sure you can find it pretty cheap these days. So I'm basically picking a chapter, and I guess not a chapter in the book. It's one episode of the podcast, which in my case, I think I'm going to pick 13, 14, 15 because it's three short chapters. So if I've only got a shorter amount of time, I can pick one of those three chapters. But I'm going to stick with that one episode. It's about an hour long, and just listen to it over and over and over and over. At work, in the car, working out, whatever. Just listen to it over and over. I know that's going to get boring, so that's not all I'm going to do. When I get bored with that, I'll put something else on. But in the meantime, I'm going to try to at least once a week read and listen to all three of those chapters. That way, like, I can see the words while they're being spoken, and I'll be able to hear how they're said naturally and not just like completely sound them out. Spanish is very easy to pronounce because the letters and vowels only have the vowels only have one way to say them, and the letters only have a couple of ways to say them. Most of them it's one way. There's a couple of letters that change a little bit, but very few of those exist in Spanish. It's You mostly see what you get. But when they get talking faster, it's a little harder to parse where words start and stop. Um, it's a little harder to like understand where they're stressing the word and all this and that. And of course, people kind of are lazy when they talk, so stuff gets meshed together. And it's good to be able to read in black and white what it is they're saying so that you're understanding the words that they say and you're not mixing it up and the sounds that they're making. And you can hear how it's actually pronounced and read it on the page at the same time.
So these YouTubers are a little different than the ones I was talking about previously. They're more like how to learn a language rather than here is information about this specific language or here is lessons in this specific language. or here's just content in this specific language. These guys actually kind of teach you how to teach yourself to learn a language. And I don't think any of them, their main second language is Spanish, but um, they've all learned to either speak one language super well or many languages pretty well, and in between and whatnot. I doubt any of them would really use the term polyglot these days just because it's been given a bit of a negative connotation with YouTube and all the fake polyglots on it. With that being said, so as far as I can tell so far, these guys are pretty legit. So there you have it.
A great language learning YouTuber is Days of Words, Lamont. He's great. I've listened to some Refold stuff. They get pretty particular with their methods. I'm not going to follow them all, but they're helpful. I also think Lois Talagrand is good and has a lot of good interviews with people who know what they're talking about. I like Luca Lampariello. I'm not sure if I'm probably not pronouncing that right. And there are plenty more where that came from. Once you start watching these guys, a whole bunch of other videos will pop up. Olly Richards, I believe, is a guy. He's got some good tips and tricks.
And how could I forget? Language Simp. I don't honestly really learn much from him, but he does make language learning fun. He is hilarious. And if you happen to be learning any of the languages he's learning right now, then you might be able to learn something. But he is just hilarious, and he points out a lot of funny things about the differences between languages and, you know, the hilarity in being an American trying to learn a new language.
And as I mentioned before, I do use a few apps.
I just want to say that I'm not sponsored by any of these people. This is just stuff I've heard about and come across and looked into slightly. So make sure to check them out for yourself.
Let's start with a free one, Anki. I actually have not used it yet, but I do plan on it to a degree. I'm probably not going to use it the way it's meant to be used. So basically, it's a flashcard app. You can download pre-made flashcards. There are free ones. You can look through the list. There are things to look for. I look for pictures and audio, example sentences. There's plenty of videos online on what to look for, and it really depends on your learning style. I'm not going to be doing any of that crap. I think that if I get really stuck on a word, I might make a flashcard. And just making the flashcard, I imagine, will be enough to help it stick. So that's basically what I'm going to use it for is making flashcards on words I get stuck on. And hopefully making the flashcard in and of itself will be enough to make it stick. And if it don't, then I do have it for review and I probably will review it. Another app I use is Rocket Spanish. Rocket Languages is the parent company. I'm not sure how many languages they have. I'll probably show it on screen here. I do pay for that, or I did. So the nice thing about Rocket Spanish is some of those creators I mentioned before said it was a good one, and they do have you don't speak with people, but you speak into a mic. Their error detection is it's all right, but for reading and listening and just overall getting to know the language, like they're good lessons. Another reason I chose them is because you own the software. You can make one lump sum or payments. I'm paying $30 a month. I got some deal. It seems like they got deals all the time. So I'm paying $30 a month, and at the end of 6 months, I own it. Unlike some apps, you're paying 15, $20 a month, sure, less, but you're paying that forever. So I really like the lessons I've seen so far. I have learned some stuff from it, and it definitely reinforces the stuff I'm listening to and learning through videos and podcasts.
I should mention there is one app that I do kind of want to get still. I almost wish I would have got it instead of Rocket Languages, but Ouino Languages. Ouino languages.com. I'll leave a link in the description just because it's a weird one and not one you hear about a lot. This one I've heard great things about. Um, it's another one that you own. It is like 300 something. You might be able to find a discount. I think I saw one for $100. But like there's a learning path, customized lessons, all that stuff. I saw a review of it where they just had endless amounts of resources. Yeah, 450 lessons, 1,300 exercises, and it is a lifetime ownership of things. And right now you can get it for $100. Um, I will link this, and I will also link the review of this that I saw. It's another one from Days of Words.
And the last app that I use is Busuu. There's a free version. I don't really care for it. It's more gamification like Duolingo, and it seems pretty repetitive and boring. I haven't done too much with it. You can give it a go. It might be for you. Of course, there's plans and all this and that. I get it through my work. It's part of some education benefits I get or whatever. The reason I'm going to use it is for the teachers. I get free lessons. I'm not sure. I don't think you can buy them individually. Maybe you can. I'm not sure how all that works. I do know through italki you can buy individual lessons. So basically, I'm just going to use it for the lessons for talk practice. Those are basically the resources I have and what I use.
So, on to the free resources. Basically, you can just Google it. I mean, I use Brave Search, but you can Google it. I don't use many of these. Some I have, but I'll talk to those as I get to them. But I have taken a look through, and it does look like these particular ones actually offer free resources and a decent amount of them, unlike some where it's like you get almost nothing free, like 3 lessons of each tier or something, but then nothing after that, which is like, how you going to learn? You get to the 3rd tier and then you're hosed. You have to pay. All the ones I'm showing you now are legit free resources. So, like I said, I just search free Spanish learning, Busuu, Duolingo, online free Spanish, study Spanish. I'm not sure what Losin is. Language transfer, that is good. I'll get into that. Quintami podcast. Um, so that's a podcast that helps. I've mentioned before that podcasts are great. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff you just kind of click through. Spanish experiment with audio. I'm not sure. And yeah, you're going to have to look through some of them yourself to see how full of crap they are. They'll usually go in and show you what's free or not. I actually have kind of perused through this a little bit. Like, there's actual courses for free. There's texts with audio, dialogues with audio, grammar, podcasts, dictionary, phrasebook, comics. So there's all kinds of stuff to immerse you in there. Check this out. And it's got translations and everything. So definitely a good one. This, again, is Spanishboom.com. And while searching, I found this list of resources: online Spanish courses, learning apps. But again, some of these aren't the greatest. Like Mondly, I'm pretty sure you don't get much for free on that. Spanish Pod 101, you don't get much free on that. You do get free podcasts, but you don't get a whole lot of free like resources and stuff. And games, podcasts. So yeah, I will link that in the description so you can check those out yourself. 123 Teach Me, I actually did go through here and look at stuff. It's quizzes and just random resources. Here's an exercise with dialogue, audio. So this is a pretty good resource. It actually has stuff in there for free. Spanish listening looks pretty cool. I have not used it myself, but it looks like these native speakers just record stuff and you listen to it. So I'm trying to learn Mexican Spanish, and you just click on it and watch the video. There's a script here, quiz, vocab. speak, grammar. So, yeah, pretty good resource there. While searching, I also found this Reddit post, which I will also link in the description. So, it looks like somebody sat here and posted a whole bunch of stuff that the Mexican government teaches their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. So, that would be a big help to learn the basics. So, the app I mentioned that I use, Rocket Languages, actually has free resources. There are free Spanish lessons. So, Spanish grammar, Spanish adverbs. So, here's like the lesson up top, and then you can speak. I think it will correct you. I mean, it's audio listening stuff is okay, but okay, and then here's flashcards. Here's more audio. Here's you to type the answers. So here's a bunch of little quizzes for you too. So this is a legit resource for learning Spanish. Of course, you do have to deal with this. Language transfer is great. It's basically a podcast where a teacher talks to somebody learning the language. Here's the Spanish, and you just sit and listen to these.
Tooth in Spanish is diente. So this is coming from dental. So if you look up tooth in the dictionary and you find diente, rather than treating it as like a random piece of vocabulary that you have to memorize, you can relate it back to dental.
So the reason it's called language transfer is basically he's trying to take your English and show you how to use it to make sense of Spanish, which kind of makes sense because there are a lot of cognates, which are words that are basically the same word, and then there are a lot of words derived from the same base word that we use and they use. So yeah, I think this is a really good option for listening to Spanish and learning through listening. It's pretty great for commutes. I actually do listen to this one on my commute. And so if you need an app or program to watch TV, Pluto.tv is a good one. There is a Spanish option. Let's see here. En español. So, if you click on that, all of these movies should be in Spanish. So yeah, all these should be dubbed into Spanish and also have Spanish subtitles, or at least one or the other. I would try to watch both. So another good option here is Tubi. You can go to Browse Espanol. It's tubitv.com, and then when you go to Browse Espanol, you're in Tubi Espanol, and all this stuff here is in Spanish. And you can just watch it. Make an account. Of course, there's YouTube, and as with everything else, make a separate profile in YouTube. You don't have to use a whole new email or anything. You can just go to switch account and add account, and you'll be able to make a new profile and only watch Spanish stuff. So I was talking about Spanish Pod 101, and there is a free plan, but you don't get much with it. There is free stuff like 50 most common verbs, talking about days in Spanish. So you can look around and find some stuff. I'm not sure how I got to this. Let me see. So you can go into vocabulary and find these ones that say free, and that's pretty much what you get for free. It's not bad though. You get a few things. If you need somebody to talk to, you can go to conversationexchange.com. Basically, they're trying to learn English while you're trying to learn Spanish. You do have to search. You'd fill this out and you'd find somebody to talk to, and they are looking for you and you're looking for them, and you just exchange languages if you cannot afford a teacher. If you can afford a teacher, they are pretty cheap. Italki.com. Find a teacher, change this to Spanish, and $33 trial, $15 trial, $10 trial, $5 trial. So you can find people to speak Spanish for pretty cheap. I'm not sure how it works. I've never used it, but like I said, I am using Busuu myself. Well, there we go. A bunch of free resources to learn Spanish. Hopefully they help y'all save a couple of bucks.
So, overall, my plan is to use all kinds of media, be it books, TV, podcasts, you name it, and I'm just going to soak it in. Just soak it in. I'm not going to give myself any time limits. I am going to have little mini goals, little tasks like my book thing, for instance. I suppose I didn't mention that earlier, but I am going to learn those 3 chapters inside and out. And I'm going to do my little lessons. I'm going to make sure I do it every day, at least a little bit. And if I don't feel like doing one thing one day, I could watch a video another day. I mean, I can just put something on in the background. So I'm going to try and get a little bit of Spanish in every day. And I know that'll make me want to do a lot more. I hope this video helps somebody out there. Let me know if you're learning a language. What language you're learning. Alright then. I'm going to go get some sleep.